They may have had big intentions, but these epic tales fell upon largely deaf ears. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 biggest fantasy movie box office flops.
He's an ass. Only I can end this war.
Explain yourself.
Looking for more WatchMojo videos with a British twist? Well, pack your bags and take a trip to WatchMojo UK for even more bloody brilliant content. For this list, we'll be ranking films from the fantasy movie genre that failed to make their money back, a decent amount of profit at the box office, or were also negatively reviewed. Some of these movies may have actually earned cult status amongst fans, but their initial theatrical run needs to have been considered a financial failure.
Julia! Just in time.
Number 10. Krull.
I was young when I last spoke it to you.
And my face was as beautiful as my name.
This film exemplifies what we mentioned about achieving cult status. Krull hit theaters back in 1983, during a time when swords, sorcery, and fantasy were big box office business. Director Peter Yates and company were allowed a $47 million budget with which to work their magic, but Krull only took in $16.5 million when all was said and done. In short, it missed its chance to connect with audiences of the time.
Here is the knowledge you seek.
Opinions regarding the film have softened today, with some looking back on Krull with a smiling sense of nostalgia, but this doesn't change the fact that it was a certified 80s dud.
All men need company.
Yes.
Number 9. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
We're about to make off with the Sultan's treasure. We can't just stop.
Sometimes, critical acclaim and audience interest just don't come together. This was definitely the case with The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, from acclaimed filmmaker Terry Gilliam. Critics praised the fantastic visual effects, and the film was even nominated for a number of Academy Awards back in 1988. Unfortunately, Gilliam's work bombed hard at the box office, bringing in a paltry $8 million against a more than $46 million budget.
Stop it! Get away! Stop it!
Maybe audiences didn't know what to make of Gilliam's unique cinematic vision, but whatever the reason, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen definitely deserved better.
Your reality, sir, is lies and balderdash.
Number 8. City of Ember. One might think that a film based upon a fantastic young adult fiction series should be a slam dunk at the box office, right? Perhaps, unless we're talking about 2008's City of Ember. The movie adaptation hit theaters 5 years after Jean Dupraux's book, but struggled to find acceptance with both critics and audiences.
My dad made this.
It doesn't look very safe.
What's worse was that City of Ember only managed to see a $17.9 million return against an estimated $55 million budget, effectively dashing any hopes that further books in Dupraux's series might receive the big screen treatment.
That's dramatic.
Dad, this place is falling apart.
Number 7. Jack Frost.
You the man!
No, you the man!
Nope, I'm the snowman!
So, do you think everything from Jim Henson's Creature Shop is cute, cuddly, and lovable? Well, think again. Jack Frost was far removed from both the charm of The Muppet Show as well as the cool mysticism of the Dark Crystal. Instead, it follows a man who returns as an anthropomorphic snowman after a tragic car accident. You know, a family picture.
I'm home.
Families didn't exactly flock to see Jack Frost, which was, by all accounts, a critical and commercial failure. The film eventually brought in approximately $34.5 million at the box office, which doesn't sound all that bad, until you realize that Jack Frost cost $85 million to make. Ouch. Number 6. R.I.P.D.
Look, we're all friends here. Let's help each other out.
On the surface, R.I.P.D. seemed to have all the tools required to succeed. An interesting plot, great characters, and plenty of money in the budget to secure a smash hit. So, what went wrong? Well, critics hated it for starters, with many pointing out the script's similarities to supernatural government operative flicks, such as the Men in Black franchise. Fans didn't seem too interested in what R.I.P.D. was laying down, either, perhaps resilient to what director Robert Schwenke and his crew had in mind for his Dark Horse Comics adaptation.
Oh yeah, that's a dead-o. Big old mouth coming in.
The film only garnered $78 million against a $130 million budget, leaving just about everyone disappointed.
Dead-o's on wheels.
Oh, that's disappointing.
I was hoping to get a little break here.
Number 5. 47 Ronin. It was a bold move for American filmmakers to try and adapt the Japanese tale of the 47 Ronin, a real-life group of samurai who became legends for their mission of vengeance, death, and ritual suicide. 2013's 47 Ronin wasn't the first fictional adaptation of this tale, a genre known as Chushingura, but it's perhaps one of the most notable when it comes to financial failure. The film didn't perform to expectations in either Japan or the US, especially when taking into account 47 Ronin's $175 million price tag. When all was said and done, the worldwide take totaled just over $150 million, making this one a certified sword-swinging flop.
I would rather have been killed by that beast than saved by a half-breed.
Number 4. Dungeons & Dragons. It all sounds too simple on paper. Adapt one of the world's most popular role-playing games with a big-budget fantasy treatment. This was easier said than done, however, as Dungeons & Dragons was a complete disaster for both D&D fans and fantasy buffs alike. The film suffered from poor, hammy performances, cheap effects, and a bad script, with none of this going unnoticed by both fans and critics.
Let their blood rain from the sky!
Indeed, Dungeons & Dragons tends to come up a lot when bad movie discussions get going, and this reputation is well earned, as the flick only managed to make $33.8 million against a $45 million budget, which if you ask us, is still too much.
What a shame.
Number 3. Pan.
Come unto me, you are home.
How many Peter Pan movies do we need? This question was likely running through the heads of audiences in 2015, when this film was released. Pan was a box office bomb that attempted to update the classic children's tale for a new audience. Unfortunately, Pan didn't even come close to capturing the magical vibe of Hook, never mind Disney's Peter Pan. The film flopped on a number of levels, from clunky CGI to the decision to make the film an origin story for the relationship between Peter Pan and Captain Hook.
Are you brave, Peter?
I tried to be.
Ultimately, Pan came close to breaking even against its $150 million budget, with a total of about $128 million. Close, but no cigar.
The little one. He wears the pan.
Number 2. King Arthur, Legend of the Sword.
You're alright, Mike. Why have enemies when you can have friends?
It was one of 2017's most epic flops, and one shameful example of Hollywood financial excess. King Arthur, Legend of the Sword cost an astonishing $175 million to make, and went through multiple stages of production hell before finally reaching screens. Once it was there, fans were left cold by its choppy editing, uneven performances, and below-average writing. Initial projections of a $25 million opening weekend consistently dropped, as word of mouth began to spread about the film's quality.
I feel a joke coming on here.
King Arthur, Legend of the Sword eventually limped out to about a $148 million take, but this wasn't enough for director Guy Ritchie and crew to even be considered for a sequel.
What are you doing? There are no targets at the fair.
That was Clarendon. He earned that.
Before we name our top pick, here are a few dishonorable mentions.
We don't want any trouble.
Good. Because that's what you're gonna get. Trouble. Yeah. All three of you. A whole lot of trouble.
Then came the muffled call of Open Sesame! And the cave opened to reveal the most unpleasant collection of bandits.
Ella, a Frau?
Well, Ella or Frau, you're the first maiden I've met who hasn't swooned at the sight of me.
Then maybe I've done you some good.
Number 1. Conan the Barbarian. Jason Momoa may be enjoying a sexy rep today for playing Aquaman, but his career hit a roadblock back in 2011 when he starred in this disastrous reboot of Conan the Barbarian.
I live, I love, I slay, and I am content.
The film spent years in development hell before finally seeing the light of day, but it was hard to accept anybody other than Arnold Schwarzenegger in the titular role. Perhaps this turned fans away from exploring Momoa's take on the character, despite director Marcus Nispel and crew delivering tons of violent action to the screen. When all was said and done, Conan the Barbarian only mustered up a little more than half of its $90 million budget.
I will follow you to hell.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo and subscribe for new videos every day.